Of you to receive His Excellency President John Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana.
Thank you. Good morning. Please be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media, and thank you very much for taking time off your busy schedules to be here with us for the first presidential press conference of the year. A very happy and prosperous new year to you and everyone following this event across all media platforms in the country. Today marks exactly 1 year since I took the oath of office and began my first term as a duly elected president of our dear nation, Ghana. In my inaugural address, I invited all Ghanaians, irrespective of party affiliation, ethnicity, religion, and socioeconomic status, to join me in a renewed partnership that creates prosperity and equal opportunities for all our citizens. Over these past 12 months, I've been working hard, despite some clear challenges and hurdles, to move our country's prospects onto a firm and steady path that should truly make our nation great and strong. Together with the prayers, support, and hard work of all Ghanaians, and also with the favor of the Almighty God, we have not only survived, but we have stood tall as we tackled the devastating impact of a series of mysterious fire outbreaks in some of our markets. These fires threatened the economic activities and livelihoods of some of our hardworking traders, especially our women entrepreneurs. With the commitment, goodwill, and determination of all Ghanaians, we emerged out of the stormy clouds created by an 8-month-long election petition hearing. Ghana emerged with her democratic credentials intact and continues to be the beacon of stability, good governance, and democracy on the African continent. Despite the adverse impact the uncertainty generated by the petition had on our economy, evidenced by the slow growth posted in the first half of the year of 6.7%, postponed investment decisions, and delay of released pledges of donor funds, our economy bounced back in the latter part of the year, and I'm happy to say we're on track to achieve a respectable provisional GDP growth rate of 7.4% for the year 2013. Again, working with organized labor, we've been able to bring under control the spate of industrial actions that characterized the year 2013. While the wage bill continues to exert pressure on our budget, I'm certain that understanding of the challenges our economy faces and a spirit of goodwill and consensus building with organized labor will see us through this difficulty too. Dear friends, sisters, and brothers, I know we have hard work to do so we can improve the living standards of every Ghanaian child, man, and woman, whether it's a farmer or the fisherman, the trader or the businessman or businesswoman, whether it's a skilled professional, the laborer or artisan, the student or teacher, or the nurse who is dedicated to her job of delivering health care in the most difficult circumstances. Every Ghanaian deserves the best, and I'm constantly concerned about the plight and living conditions of every one of us. So I'm re-energized and more determined in my desire and ambition to build a prosperous, more stable, and more united nation with great opportunities for all our citizens. Together with my team, we are renewing our commitment towards the rapid transformation of the Ghanaian economy so that we can all enjoy great improvements in the delivery of basic social services and infrastructure, especially for the vulnerable and deprived in our communities. During this first year of my first term as president, our government has undertaken a range of important measures to ensure fiscal discipline. We placed a moratorium on a new award of new contracts to reduce the budget deficit. We continued implementation of the single spine pay salary structure. We improved ministerial responsibility and accountability by having ministers sign performance contracts and many other such measures. In my continuing drive for responsible, transparent, and accountable governance, we also began installation of prepaid meters in government offices and residences of public officials. Overall, my government wants to be judicious and wise in the way we spend the resources entrusted into our care by the people of this great country. And that is why I banned the use of public funds for the purchase and distribution of Christmas hampers last Christmas. Sorry to anybody who was expecting a hamper, didn't get it. We want to ensure that the people's money is used in a manner that brings the best and maximum benefits to our people. We have only this week commenced identification and registration of government vehicles to prevent their misuse. In addition, we have made progress in the last year in working to resolve a number of chieftaincy disputes. We also took decisive measures to deal with the incidents of illegal gold mining, popularly known as galamsey. In Parliament, we have acted quickly to represent and support many important but long-delayed bills, including the Right to Information Bill, and I urge Parliament to deal with this bill with dispatch. We've recommitted ourselves to the fight against corruption by introducing and monitoring strong anti-corruption initiatives. We must prevent corruption in every sphere of our national life, and wherever it occurs, we must join together to deal with it as forcefully as possible. Dear friends, brothers and sisters, a brand new year is here with us, and we have the bright hope for a great future. In this second year of my first term in office, we are forging ahead with faith and fortitude to build on the foundations that we have laid in 2013. In this new year, 2014, we have greater work to do. In the area of jobs and decent work, I'm going to focus on implementing policies that generate jobs, especially for our youth. We are certain that a number of key projects we have embarked on, like the Takoradi Harbour expansion, the soon-to-be-cut Tema Harbour expansion, construction of railways, construction of schools, construction of Kwame Nkrumah Interchange, and many other road projects, public work projects across the country will deliver some good jobs. The drive to create jobs is one of the reasons why we have worked hard to ensure that the unscheduled power cuts or energy crisis become a thing of the past. We have made some progress, and the despised load shedding that resulted in days of power outages to our citizens has been effectively curtailed. But we are not done yet. We will work even harder this year to ensure that we achieve further and lasting improvements in our power supply. With reliable and predictable power supply, jobs can be created as more and more people set up small and medium-scale enterprises. In the area of education, we have laid some strong and steady foundations for the construction of a good number of senior high schools. Through these building projects in the education sector, we should be also able to generate some extra jobs. My brothers and sisters, I recommit myself to the necessary hard work, dedication, and wise leadership for the rapid improvement in the lives of all Ghanaians. My pledge is to do everything within the powers vested in me by the people to take Ghana and Ghanaians to a better place. And I believe that together we can make life better. We can build a more united, more inclusive, and a truly better Ghana. With every Ghanaian engaged and involved, and by the grace of the Almighty God, we shall attain a Ghana of excellent living standards and a Ghana that is greater and stronger in the Community of Nations. We're a nation of great and hard-working people. Let us close our ranks. Let us focus on the things that unite us and renew our pledges and allegiances to this great land bequeathed to us by our forefathers and foremothers. I wish to thank every member of the media for your support and encouragement and your constructive criticism during the past year. With your help, we can and must do better. I thank you, and it's now my honor and privilege to take your questions on behalf of the people of Ghana over the next 2 hours. Thank you.
Happy New Year to you, Mr. President, and your team.
Happy New Year, Jifa.
Since it's the new year, many Ghanaians are unhappy about increases in electricity, water, VAT, and NHIL. Also, tax increases in the budget, which take effect from this year. Plus, there is a potential freeze on wage increases. So many are not optimistic about 2014 as you are, and are certain that there will be economic hardships this year. What steps are being taken by government to relieve the hardships ahead? And since you say you care so much about women, there was a public debate about the dismissal of former Deputy Communications Minister Victoria Hama. There was no clarity on why she was dismissed. Why was she dismissed?
Two quick questions, Mr. President. The first one is on energy. In your speech, you made mention of the need to create jobs, and therefore energy becomes very critical in that respect. And you also mentioned the fact that even though we are out of the dumso, there's still a lot more to be done, and by this year, it will be consolidated for the purpose of creating jobs. But why should the Ghanaian people be grateful to your government and yourself for taking us through this and bringing us out of the darkness? That's the first one. The second one is that, Mr. President, you just recently came back from a holiday trip in Dubai, for which you have been nicknamed Kofi Dubai. What really went into that? Is it a private visit? Is it a holiday, or what? The people of Ghana would like to know, Mr. President. Thank you.
Well, good morning, Mr. President. My name is Sami Dako. I work for the BBC World Service. My first question is about, we are journalists. We hear a lot of people talk about a number of matters. I've heard a lot of people talk about the quality and maturity of your appointees. Some have said that if you appoint mediocre people, you end up with a mediocre results. Now, these concerns are not just from ordinary Ghanaians, or if you like, the opposition, but also within your own party. Some have suggested that there are more qualified, matured, and experienced people within your party who could do a better job. Have you heard about these concerns? And if you have, what do you want to do about it? And the other issue I wanted to find out from you, or I want to find out from you, is that last year, we heard a lot about you talking about terrorism on the international front. Now, we know Ghana to be a relatively peaceful country. Religions are at peace with each other. Now, are you not concerned or worried about talking about these terrorist attacks and the fact that you could be drawing upon yourself something that you have very little or no influence at all? I'm talking about Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, Akim, and all the rest. And probably the advice you have for your friend, good luck, Jonathan. Thank you.
Your Excellency may answer the questions.
Thank you. Jifa, thanks for your question. I think it's a question that agitates the minds of a lot of people. If you ask my outlook for 2014, I'm very positive. I'm upbeat that it's going to begin the transformation of our country. It's going to mark the opening of new doors of opportunities for us. But let me just explain in a way that is easy for everybody to understand the situation in which we found ourselves. If you are the head of a family, Jifa, and you are the breadwinner, and you find yourself in a situation where you have what in economic terms we call a deficit. What it means is that your expenditure exceeds your income. You're being paid 10,000 Ghana cedis a month, and your family is spending 20,000 Ghana cedis. What's going to happen to your family? You get into debt, you probably will end up in prison. And so what you need to do is to take some measures that will involve sacrifices. It's the same like a country. You cannot continue to subsidize, you cannot continue to give freebies when you don't have the income to be able to support it. And so that's the challenge we're faced with. We have a deficit, our expenditure exceeds our income at the beginning of 2013 by 12%. We're spending more, 12% of GDP every year than we earn. And so you need to balance out your expenditure and your income. And how do you do it? You must increase your income. You would either take a second job. After you close from the bank, you go and work in a filling station and pump some petrol and earn some extra money to add on to the family budget. And then at the same time, you will cut expenditure. If your son Kofi needed a new bicycle, you delay in buying it for him because that would increase expenditure. You would tell your husband, Mauli, to reduce the number of bottles of beer he drinks a day. You know, if he was drinking 3, he should drink 1. You buy fewer shoes, you buy 2 shoes instead of 5. That is the way the reality is for a family, and it is the way the reality is for a nation. Those decisions are not easy to take. For me, if I could give free petrol to Ghanaians, I'll do so. If I could make energy as cheap as possible, I'll do so. But there are some tough decisions you must take. We have a deficit of energy. We currently have an installed capacity of about 2,800 megawatts. Our demand for power is rising by 6 to 7% every year. And so you need to put in more energy generation. Government does not have the investment to be able to do it. You need to bring the private sector in to help you to do it. The private sector doesn't come and set up a thermal plant to sell energy at a loss. And so you must adjust tariffs to an extent that makes it attractive for them to come in. What do? You have to adjust tariffs to make it attractive. Or else then you must find money in the budget to subsidize the electricity tariffs. And if you do so, how do you build the secondary schools that you promised the people? How do you provide the district hospitals? How do you provide the CHIPS compounds? So governance is a difficult business. Difficult decisions need to be taken. And the mark of leadership is you take difficult decisions when they need to be taken. And that's what I've done. I believe 2014 is going to be a good year, and it's going to be the start of good things for Ghana. That leads me to energy and power crisis. Why should we be celebrated for solving the energy crisis? I'm not saying anybody should celebrate us for solving the energy crisis. It is the duty of government to ensure that there's adequate power. But the thing about energy and power is you don't click your finger and it appears. It takes years to deliver every single power plant. And so the crisis we faced is not a crisis caused by Mahama's first year of government. It's a crisis of adding enough generation over a long period of time. But as president, you inherit assets and liabilities. You don't take only the assets and reject the liabilities. And so I accept that we have an energy crisis, and as president I must do something about it. I can blame previous governments, and I'm doing something about it. That's all. I don't expect to be praised for that. Holiday trip. Why did I take a leave and travel out of the country? I believe that it is important for people to take a rest from time to time, whoever you are, both for your own inner refreshment. It makes you come back more refreshed. It makes you able to see things in a clearer focus, and it makes you healthy. And so I think that everybody must take a leave from time to time and just rest and recharge your batteries. It's also for good governance. Everybody must take a leave and let others handle, the responsibility. Nobody should be indispensable to his country or his organization, that if I go on leave, the organization cannot function. If you have that kind of organization, then there's something wrong. A lot of public services, you go and somebody's gone on leave, and some function that should be performed, there's nobody who's been prepared to perform it. And so you have to wait till that person comes back from leave. It shouldn't be so. Everybody should be able to go on leave. The organization should continue to work perfectly. So I'll encourage everybody to take leave, and we will put in the administrative measures to ensure that everybody takes a leave, at the appropriate time. It's also good, sometimes people don't go on leave for quite devious reasons. They are sitting on something, they don't want to get off. So that if somebody comes and sits on, we'll see some things that exist. So even for good governance and accountability reasons, people must take leave, and others must act for them for the period they are away, so that we have transparency and accountability. And besides, I didn't have a problem. I have a very capable vice president, and so the country was in good hands at all times. Now, when I took this leave, for strategic reasons, decided to go to Dubai, because I had received an invitation from the ruler of Dubai to pay a private visit. And so I decided, why not take a leave and visit? And as you are all aware, the Middle East and the Gulf region have some of the largest sovereign funds in the world. And even Western leaders are going to the UAE and other countries to attract investment to their countries. And so I didn't only take a leave and go enjoying myself. I took the opportunity to meet the ruler of Dubai, Sheikh Maktoum. I met their investment group in Abu Dhabi, and out of the discussions I had with them, they have committed to send a technical team here early in this year to look at investment opportunities in Ghana. So it wasn't a wasted vacation. Thank you. Many considerations go into selecting political appointees. And the president has to take several things into consideration. The Constitution says that the majority of ministers should be selected from Parliament. And so you have to look in the pool you have in Parliament, 275 members, and choose the majority of your ministers from there. Then in addition, it says you must ensure reasonable gender and geographical balance. So you have to look across the country and look for people from all regions. Aside from that, you must make sure that women are well represented in your government. So many considerations go into appointing members of government. In doing this, I've been guided by my own experience. I was given the opportunity very early in life to serve in political office. I was appointed deputy minister in my 30s. And so I believe that youth have a role to play and that we should not deny people political appointment because we think they're young. And I believe that women are as good as men in any position that they occupy. I still hold to those principles. But like a coach, a time comes when you must take some decisions to move a player off the field. And coaches have the privilege to do so without question. And so as president, I have the privilege to decide who serves in my government, who leaves at what time. And so the decision is mine, and I've taken it, and I take responsibility for it. The last question, terrorism. Yeah, terrorism has plagued our sub-region. We had thought that we were, safe from this scourge, but we realized that nowhere in this world is any country safe from the scourge of terrorism. Ghana so far has been lucky to have been spared, any direct terrorist attacks. But we must not rest on our oars and assume that we're immune from terrorist attacks. If we look at what happened in Kenya recently, the threat that happened in Mali, Nigeria, as you said, Boko Haram, it's not far from our shores, and so we need to be alert about the issues of terrorism. But the fact that terrorism exists doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it. If you don't talk about it, how can you find, a solution for it? We have committed in West Africa to work on an anti-terrorism plan, and so together all our countries are contributing to work on preventing terrorism. And so it's something we need to discuss and think about ways and means to prevent it, not only within our countries, but within our sub-region, within our continent, and all over the world. And the way to do that is not to be afraid to talk about it, but to talk about it and find how we can achieve solutions to the plague of terrorism. And so I'll continue to discuss it with my colleagues, I'll continue to mention it, but at the same time, we'll continue to prepare our nation, in the event that there's any such attack, how we can respond to it. Thank you.
Good morning, Your Excellency. My name is Roland Akwa Stephen. I work with Radio Gold. On September 23rd, 2013, when you addressed the United Nations, you made a statement, and I paraphrase. You said that as a president and a father, you owe it to your son and your daughter and all children of Ghana a legacy to make Ghana a place worthwhile and prosperous. And you linked it to your African story. With this background, the question is, you did make a promise in your manifesto, a pledge, the social contract with the goodwill of this country, on access to education, and especially basic education. Can you tell us today that that promise you made, you're on the right track? Thank you very much.
Okay.
My name is Kwame Adinkra, Angel FM Kumasi. In recent times, some high members of your party have created an impression that you're running more or less family and friend government. Some have talked about accessibility. And I want to know your government's relationship with the party hierarchy and the party leadership. And I want to know a bit about the Kumasi airport, the condition it is now, whether it will be upgraded into an international airport, because some time ago you came, you inspected the place. We've seen the PW people there, but still, the runway is just the same, and I want to know more about that. You talked about railway and transportation, and I want also to know about the Buankra Inland Port, whether indeed there are more plans for the Buankra Inland Ports. And finally, you promised the people of Kumasi a national theater, and we want to know how far you've gone with that. Thank you very much.
I'm Dave Agbenu. I work with the Ghanaian Times. Good morning, Your Excellency. You were reported to have said that you were surprised MPP went to court over the election petition. Were you really surprised? And if you were surprised, what do you make of the election petition?
Thank you. During the elections, education was one of the issues that was discussed very widely, and it appeared to be probably the most prominent issue on the minds of Ghanaians. And so all the political parties espoused the educational policy. Different parties put different priorities in respect of education. In the case of our friends and opponents, the NPP, they put affordability first, and then other things after, access and quality. In our case, we put access first, quality second, affordability third. And that was the order in which we put it. And under the module of access, we believe that the most difficult challenge for secondary education in Ghana was the fact that 47% of our children who qualify for secondary school do not continue into secondary school because there's just no place for them. And so we thought that that was the first thing we should tackle. And so we promised 200 new community day secondary schools across the country. We have spent the last year working very hard on achieving this promise. And I want to congratulate Professor Nana Jane-Opoku and her team at the Ministry of Education for the very hard work that they have done. In the course of this year, the technical team came out with the criteria for deciding where the schools should be sited. And the first criteria was to site a secondary school in all the new districts that had been created that were without secondary schools. The next criteria was to site secondary schools in all districts that did not have secondary schools. And then the third was to identify districts in which they already had secondary schools, but the pressure for secondary education was high. And so if a district had a lot of GSS students coming out and they had just 1 or 2 secondary schools, then even though they had secondary schools, you need to cite additional secondary schools there. So that was the criteria. The criteria has been gone through, and the selected districts have been written to. They were asked to identify sites where the schools will be built. The traditional authorities, I must say, have been very cooperative, and in all the districts that we selected, they have offered the sites. The sites have been identified. Currently, site clearing is underway to prepare for construction of the buildings. The ministry has also commissioned the drawing of the architectural plans which have been done. Models of the schools have been produced and displayed. And currently, if those of you who read the newspapers, at the end of last year, you must have seen that the ministry advertised tenders for the first batch of the schools, 50 schools. We should have started 50 schools last year, but because of transparency and having to go through a thorough process to ensure that the projects are executed properly, we spent the whole of last year doing that. And so this year, we're going to start with the first 50, but we're also going to start with the second 50. So we intend to start work on 2 batches of 50 community day secondary schools this year. And so we're on track to deliver on that promise. And it's a commitment we made, and I'm committed to ensuring that we increase access for secondary education for our children. With regards to family and friends, government, I don't know where that is coming from. You have my minister sitting here. See how many of my family are sitting here. I have 18 siblings. We are 19 in all. I'm the 19th. I have 18 siblings. None of my siblings is in any political appointment. So I don't know about family and friends. It's for you to interrogate that and find out if it's true or not. But my relationship with our party is good. I have a good relation with all the executives. Indeed, they're all my friends. And yes, in any organization you would have disagreements, but it doesn't mean that we're not friends and we're not working together. I don't abhor criticism, and so yes, some members of our government and our party have criticized me. It's their right to do so. It makes me a stronger person. If the criticism is fair, I will take corrective measures. If it's not fair, I will discuss it with them and say, I don't think this criticism is fair. But we belong to the same party. Our destiny is the same. And so I believe that it is something that we can work on together, and it's not a problem. Every organization has disagreements. It is how you manage those disagreements that matter. Kumasi Airport, yes, we're going to upgrade Kumasi Airport because it's the second busiest airport in this country, and it's our intention to upgrade it to international status. And so it's one of the airports we're going to upgrade. We're also doing the regional airports. We're going to rehabilitate Kumasi Airport. We're going to rehabilitate Sunyani Airport. We're going to build new aerodromes in Cape Coast, in Ho, in Koforidua, and in Bolga, so that we can have domestic aviation serving all our regional capitals. It's also useful in the event that you have to do medical evacuations to have an aerodrome so that you can fly in and pick people out who are critically injured from accidents or any other such debilitation. And so we're going ahead with it. It is my hope that this year we'll cut the sod for the beginning of the reconstruction of the railways in this country. For any country that intends to develop, the railways are very important. And we cannot continue to carry all cargo by road. 90 to 95% of our cargo internally is carried by road. And this is not an acceptable situation. It makes it difficult to enforce the load limit on the roads, because people have to convey containers, and if you have to convey containers and there's a machine in the container that is heavier than the load limit, are you going to cut the machine in half and put half of it aside? You cannot do that. And so when these cargoes are carried on our roads, they destroy the roads. And that's why railways exist, so that when you have heavy cargo, you can move it onto the railway, and the railway is cheaper to move a lot of cargo. And so this year, we will cut sod for the beginning of the reconstruction of our railways. And the main railways we are targeting are the Western Corridor Rail Line and the Eastern Corridor Rail Line. The Eastern Corridor Rail Line is tied in with the Buankra Port. That is an inland port supposed to serve the middle belt of the country and also the northern parts, including Burkina Faso and Mali. If we're able to build the rail line and activate the Buankra inland port, it will make it easier for importers in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger to pick their cargo. Instead of driving all the way to Tema, they will stop in Buankra, pick their cargo, and turn around and go back. And so we're committed to this project, and I'm sure that it will take off this year. We are planning to build a second national theater, and we're in discussions with the Turkish Exim Bank. They sent a team down to identify the site and take the site plan. And I must thank Otumfo Osei-Tutu for being very generous in identifying a site for them. And so they've gone back with the site plans. They're going to do the architectural drawings, and they'll bring them back with the costing. And then based on that, we'll approve the financing for it. And then we'll have a second national theater in Kumasi, which is the second largest city in Ghana. So that is also on track. Was I surprised that the MPP went to court? Yes, I was, because I thought this was by far the cleanest, fairest, and best election we have ever had. So when they decided that they were not satisfied, with the election, I was surprised. I said, what happened, And so I thought it was a joke. We've held elections in this country, and after every election, the loser attributes it to something, says that it was a stolen verdict, or it was a bought verdict, or some kind of, thing. So I thought it was the usual grandstanding. I didn't know that it was Enibriasem. But all that is behind us now. I think that we should face forward and do the things that will make our country better. Thank you.
My name is Afil Moni, Director of GBC Radio. I also do voluntary service as President of GJ. At his first press conference to mark his first anniversary, your predecessor and mentor, Professor Mills liberally awarded himself 80% mark by way of self-assessment and given the magnitude of challenges which assailed your presidency in the first year. How would you rate yourself? And this is presidential bonus. You mentioned the fight against Galamsey as one of your achievements. But the stark reality on the ground, an issue of disturbing proportions, are that the government is easing the fight against illegal miners. Is your government capitulating to pressure from countries whose nationals destroy our environment with impunity? And how difficult is it to deal with such countries? Thank you.
My name is Eric Ahianyo from Metro TV. I think when you spoke, you made reference to efforts your government is putting in place to cut down costs. And so you've slashed your salary, and then you've also introduced policies that will make sure those who are managing some resources belonging to the state use them effectively. You've also talked about performance contract, and then I've seen a code of conduct for your appointees. But the unfortunate thing is that most of the time, governments fail to crack the whip on their appointees, either because they don't have the political will or they are not committed really to match the promises they make. I want to ask you this. Are you bold enough to go by your code of conduct and the performance contract to, say, sack ministers under whose regime some institutions underperform? I'm talking about shoddy work in terms of contract. If I can quickly make reference to the fire that gutted the Judgment Debt Commission. I remember during the fire outbreak, National Security, the Ghana National Fire Service, said they were going to place fire tenders as strategic national installations. So for us, I think it was a stab in the back for us to wake up to see fire destroy such an office close to the homes of many of the government appointees and even the National Fire headquarters. In some jurisdictions, the heads would go by themselves. In Ghana, they fail to go. Our presidents like you may stop short of asking them to go to serve as a deterrent. These things affect budgeting, cost, and reduction. I want to find out from you if you are bold enough. Quick one, housing has a huge deficit. We have several projects which are rotting away, and we are cutting saw to initiate others. Why won't us focus on the ones which are near completion? Is it political? Is it commitment? Or what is it? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Bernard Avele from City FM. My questions will be based on the spirit of the theme, 1 year of responsible, transparent, and accountable governance. Some people have been quite concerned about your alleged role in the way the debts of a company called EMP were dealt with Merchant Bank and your role as vice president at the time. Can you kindly explain the role you played in that transaction, if any? And can you confidently say there was no potential of conflict of interest in the spirit of what my colleague just asked? And the second quick corollary question, still on corruption, you gave 31st December last year as a deadline for a number of things. And let me just quote from the 15th November speech. You instructed the Minister of Justice and AG, IOCO, and Finance Ministry to work with the Minister for Youth and Sports to secure refunds of monies wrongfully paid in SADA, GIDA, and GRA, and to initiate legal action against companies or individuals to secure the refund and to punish for wrongdoing. So it's a whole week after that deadline. Could you kindly update us on this specific promise you made in that speech? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have three questions here. The first one is self-assessment. How do you rate yourself? I shy away from rating myself. I think it's for the people of Ghana to do that rating, and I'm not going to give myself any mark. I believe that the people of Ghana have lived the experience of 1 year of my administration. They've been through the challenges with us together, and they've seen what we've done, the foundation that we're laying for a better tomorrow. And so it's your duty to rate me. It's your duty to do scientific polls and listen to the people and publish those polls and say, this is how the people of Ghana see the first year of administration of Mahama government. Professor Mills was a teacher, and so I guess he was quite used to giving marks, and so probably that's why when you asked him, he gave his own assessment. But I'm a communicator, and I believe that the media should be the ones to do that rating. Thank you. Thank you very much. The fight against Galamsey, we've not given up. The first step, we realized that there were a lot of foreign nationals, involved in illegal mining in our country. And so the first step was two-pronged. One, to get the foreigners out of illegal mining, and then two, to abate the worst forms of that illegal mining. We've been largely successful in doing that. We deported almost 5,000 foreign nationals as a result of that operation. And I believe that it has minimized, the spate. We're coming out with additional measures in order to, deal with the issue of Galamsey. And the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources is working hard on the next phase. The next phase is not just using security agencies, but also adding a reclamation and a livelihoods angle to the fight against Galamsey. If you stop the young people from engaging in illegal mining, what else do you have to offer them? And that is what we have to think about. They are Ghanaian citizens, they want to earn a decent living, and unfortunately, probably because they don't have adequate employment, they see this as a measure to be able to make money and to prosper and look after their families. And so we're coming with a new phase of the anti-Galamsey struggle that continues to use security to stop the worst forms of illegal mining, but at the same time offers livelihoods alternatives to the young people involved in Galamsey, and also includes reclamation of the lands that have been destroyed. And even there again, we're going to use the same young people who destroyed those lands to reclaim those lands. We are getting offers to help clean the polluted waters. We don't have the technology, and so we have to get it from outside to help clean the polluted waters, to push back the soil and level it, push the topsoil back on, and then engage the boys in planting trees on the lands that have been destroyed. So that's the next phase we're going into. We're discussing it with some technical and donor partners, and once it's ready, the Minister of Lands and Forestry would outdoor the new policy on Galamsey. Cutting costs and failing to crack the ship. I'm not sure about the example you used, because if you sacked your fire chief for every fire that occurred, I wonder how many fire chiefs you change every year. Because even in the most advanced countries, they still have fires, despite the advancement in firefighting technology. I think that what is more important is not incumbent on the chief fire officer, but it's incumbent on us who occupy those properties to make sure that we make fire safety a part of the occupancy of those premises. And so for the daily graphic, for the daily guide, for all your media houses, you must have fire extinguishers. It's not the fire officer who is coming to put fire extinguishers there. You must also look at the wiring of your building. It's said that within a certain time frame, you must always change the wiring of your building. I guess that it's not a practice that we have in Ghana. In most of our homes, the wires have been there since we built them. There might be some mice that have chewed some of the wires and all that, and eventually if they chew and the two wires touch, there can be a fire. And so we must make fire prevention a part of our own culture and day-to-day living, and not say that we'll sack the fire chief anytime there's a fire. That particular building is a historic building. It's the old Parliament House, and I've been to that building before. It was built in the old style. It has a lot of wood paneling in it. And so any incidence of fire makes it very easy, to go beyond control by the time the fire tenders arrive. But let's take the reports seriously. The reports were published of the fire in the Foreign Affairs building, and the recommendations that that committee made were published. And so heads of department must make sure they look at those recommendations and see how they create space within their budget to take some of the steps that will prevent fires from recurring. But the main question was, am I afraid to crack the ship? No, I'm not afraid to crack the ship. If it's necessary to let the ship go, it will go. And I'm sure that time will tell. Housing, we have a huge housing deficit. It's estimated at almost 1 million houses we need to ease the housing pressure in this country. And unfortunately, it's not an area that we have done very well, over preceding governments. The previous government started something towards the end of their term, 4,790 something housing units, and it was called the Affordable Housing Project. Unfortunately, it couldn't be continued for lack of funds. What we've done now is to hand it over to SNIT and ask SNIT to provide the funds to finish it and sell off the housing units and take their money back. So SNIT is taking over the Affordable Housing Project, and it is my expectation that they will finish them soon, and those houses will be available to the rest, to the general public. I don't think that they are exclusive of each other, that until we finish the affordable housing unit, we shouldn't negotiate to start any other new housing project. We can do both at the same time. And so while we are getting SNIT to finish these ones, we've signed contracts with 2 new companies to start new housing projects. They all add to the number of housing units that are available. And so I cut the sword for the OAS housing project, which is going to bring another 5,000 housing units on the market. And there's another one waiting, to be signed by the Minister of Finance, which will also bring another 5,000 housing units onto the market. So we hope that in the next few years, we should have at least almost 15,000 new housing units on the market. And I believe that that would contribute to ease some of the pressure that we have. But one of the things I intend to do this year early is to hold a meeting with the financing institutions, especially those in mortgage, and let them come together and advise me on how we can deepen the mortgage market and make mortgages available to Ghanaians for owning their own houses. We waste a lot of capital when we build the way we do. Every Ghanaian goes and looks for some land, pays for it, and then over the next 15 years goes and puts a little block somewhere and then brings the mason back to the site. They do the foundation and then leaves the foundation for another 1 or 2 years because funds are exhausted. Then come back after 2 years and then start raising the walls and then abandon it when it gets to lintel. By the time that house is finished, 15 years have gone. And if you imagine the money that has gone into it, if the person had a mortgage, it would have been easier. He would have moved into the house. He won't have to be paying rent, living somewhere. He could have saved that rent. He could have used the money that he invested in the house to invest in some business and be able to make money, to look after his family. And so we need to get our mortgage market right. And I'm not a mortgage specialist, but as president, I'll get the experts, the mortgage companies, and let them come and advise me how we can deepen the mortgage market. If government has to guarantee some financing so that they can revolve it and give it out to doctors and professionals and nurses and everybody who wants to own their homes, I think that is something that is worth doing. Thank you. EMP, engineers and planners. Engineers and planners is a corporate entity. It went to Merchant Bank in 2007 and secured a loan. I have no interest in engineers and planners. I don't owe a single share in engineers and planners. And it was giving this loan for reasons that are between engineers and planners and Merchant Bank. They defaulted in paying the facility. As Vice President, our attention was drawn to the fact that Merchant Bank was in trouble and that Merchant Bank could collapse because of the debts that were owed to it. And so, as President and Vice President, the President called a meeting which I attended to discuss the distress in which Merchant Bank was. And one of the debtors to Merchant Bank was engineers and planners. Engineers and planners happens to be owned by my younger brother Ibrahim. And so I sat in that meeting, and I must say that out of that meeting, no intervention was made to direct Merchant Bank to do anything. I can say that confidently. no intervention was made. At no time have I used executive power to try and influence Merchant Bank to do anything. After all, I became president in July. I could have influenced it, I could have dismissed the Merchant Bank board, I could have done things using executive power. I didn't do that. And so I have not played any role that conflicts in interest, that has conflict of interest. I have let the bank do what it wants. I think SNIT is an autonomous entity. It must take its own decisions. And so I have nothing to do with it. I think if you owe a bank, you must pay. And so engineers and planners must pay their debt to Merchant Bank, as everybody else who owes Merchant Bank. And I want to urge Merchant Bank and SNIT to put in a task force to retrieve their debt. Because if we continue to run our banks like this, where are we going to get credit to give to the business community? The reason why credit is expensive in Ghana is because of bad debts. All the state banks, ADB and things, all of us, I'm sure some of us here owe some of these banks and have not paid. If you owe a bank, pay. I've taken loans from banks before, and I can say I don't owe a single bank 1 cedi. Because when I take a loan, I pay. And so it's the same, whether it's engineers and planners, whether it's Abin Oha Enterprises, if you owe a bank, go and pay. And so let's SNIT and Merchant Bank take steps to recover their monies. Then we've made a lot of progress with JIDA and SADA. I must say that the major problem with JIDA was institutional weakness, lack of systems, absolute lack of systems. They were lucky to get a huge budget from communication service taxes and other things, including budgetary allocations for skills development. But JIDA didn't start, in my term in office. JIDA has been an institution that existed. We delayed in putting the legislative framework in place and putting in place the systems of accountability and transparency. And so while they were commanding huge contracts in terms of signing with service providers, they didn't have the institutional capacity to monitor and ensure accountability in those projects. That was the underlying weakness. And so we've taken the bold step of working on it. I asked the AG's department and EOCO to work on it. They prepared some dockets for prosecution. They've kept updating me on a fortnightly basis. And I'm sure that soon we'll see, some action on JIDA. But even the Attorney General has called the service providers who were paid, those monies and has entered into agreements with them to refund the monies over a period of time. So we'll reclaim what is owed the good people of Ghana. I've received the report for SADA, and some instructions have gone out to retrieve some monies. And so the Attorney General is going to be working on that. I want to restate my commitment to fighting corruption. I don't have any qualms when it comes to the fight against corruption. And we'll take the steps that are necessary to ensure that the good people of Ghana's money is not squandered frivolously. Thank you.
My name is Alaji Baturi of the Alaj. Mr. President, last year you did promise to hold periodic broadcast to the nation. And I don't know, except the traditional ones like the New Year Eve, we didn't get much of the national broadcast. You also talked about a capable vice president. There has been some debate on the social media as to why you issued your New Year statement to Ghanaians when the vice president was acting as the president of the republic. Thank you.
My name is Transported Daily Graphic. You said somewhere in July 2012, when you took over from the late president, that you were lucky to be the first president to be born after independence, 1958 if I'm right. And also said that it demonstrated some kind of faith by the older generation in the youth of this country. By your appointment, we see your own faith in the youth. But we find growing unemployment in this country. Mr. President, after 1 year, can you give assurance to the youth of this country that the hopelessness they find themselves in after graduation from universities will be a thing of the past, perhaps after your first term in office? And two, Mr. President, just before Christmas, the task force went to the market to arrest some market women who were dealing in pirated textiles. Again, instructions came from your office asking that perhaps because of the Christmas, they should be allowed to sell those gloves. Shall we ever have the courage to promote local industries so that our youth can get employment? Mr. President, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. President. Happy New Year to you and your family. Mr. President, my name is Annie Ampofo. I represent First Digital TV. Mr. President, you just came back from Dubai, and from some of the discussions you had with Dubai ruler, it looked more or less that you had a dream of Ghana becoming like Dubai. And you have also taken part in some debates and discussions that has gone around building a national development plan. 1 year down the lane, I think, Mr. President, it's about time you tell us if you have any plans towards establishing, at least starting and building or putting together a national development plan which would force every political party that comes into power to follow due, and also guide Ghanaians to also follow the vision of every leader that comes into power. Mr. President, I also want to actually add something to the 50 schools you mentioned when you were answering some of the questions. Carrying forward some of the projects, including the 50 SHS, which your Deputy Minister for Education made mention that in 2014 we're going to have at least not less than 100 schools. My question basically is carrying forward some of the projects that were not able to be achieved in 2013 into 2014, and then looking at the pressure that the single spine salary structure is also given to government, which you have complained a lot over the period. How easy can you assure Ghanaians that by extension we are not going to suffer the same economic pressure that we experienced in 2014? I beg your pardon me to ask this question. The Better Ghana laptops project that was started by a late president, there were reports in the media that some of the laptops were out or on the market on sale, and I'm wondering if your government has made any follow-ups to correct that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy New Year, Mr. President. My name is Emmanuel Parijan from Daily Democrat. You have reaffirmed your commitment to create jobs for the people of Ghana. And it is believed that in doing this, the private sector will not be left out. The sector is currently complaining of high bills, production has gone up, and they are laying off their workers. What should they expect this year?
My name is Bismarck Beverly. Your Excellency, after the demise of the late Professor Mills, you made a promise that you have an interaction with all the political parties. May I know whether it has taken place, and if not, what is happening? The last one that I would like to ask briefly, most of your appointees do complain that as a result of election petition, things that were promised to be done were not done. Again, others say that was not the case. How much does it cost the nation when we are collecting tax and other things? Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. My name is Cecil Niobodai-Winton. I work with GBC. Happy New Year to you, Mr. President. On my way to work this morning, I listened to a radio program and they were discussing your 1 year in office. A gentleman greeted you and called you Mr. Promise and said that he's very sure that today's meeting is just going to be full of promises. I guess it's got to do with assurances and how you're going to back your words with some action. I have heard a few words from you this morning and I'm inspired. The word rapid, transformation. And when these two words go together, I know it's got to do with delivery of service. But then we should also be careful that these projects you've talked about are huge projects so that we don't compromise on quality. So it's got to do with how you're going to back your actions, your words with actions. Thank you very much.
My name is Sandy Kankam of the Informal newspaper. Mr. President, happy to know that you have no problem, you have no qualms, and you don't care whose horse is God in your fight against corruption. I'm happy. In doing so, I would like to know, because various governments have suffered some issues of corruption allegation, and your government is not an exception. I would like to know the mechanisms that you put in place to ensure that issues of corruption allegation reported by the media are thoroughly investigated, and most especially when these allegations are investigated by agencies of state, be it the EOCO, the BNI, the CID, and dockets deposited at the AD department are worked on. A case in point, Mr. President, is what the Daily Dispatch reported today of the former Chief Executive Officer of the then FDB, Mr. Emmanuel Ajakun, of operating some secret accounts against the advice of the Controller and the Accountant General Department. And lastly, as an apostle of the social democratic ideals, I would like to know whether you still believe and committed to the Better Ghana agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start with my brother, Alhaji Bature. I said I'll interact with the nation more frequently. Last year, because of the challenges we faced, I was not able to do so. But this year, I intend to do so, at least every quarter, to take the burning issues that Ghanaians are discussing and to give some indication about what government is doing about it. Often when you sit as president, you have access to information that the ordinary person might not have. And so there might be concerns people have about one policy or the other. And it helps when the chief executive himself is heard explaining, what government is trying to do. So I think that is in our own interest to do so. And so I'll look at it. The New Year message is a privilege traditionally reserved for the president. I don't know if that is also delegated. I've never seen a single occasion in which the New Year message has been delegated. But if you say it's possible to delegate that one too, then I think that at the beginning of the year, Ghanaians want to hear from their president. And if say the president had traveled and the vice president had traveled, then it means the New Year message will be delivered by the speaker. Is that what Ghanaians want? So I think that one is normally not delegated, and so I'll follow in the footsteps of all my predecessors and make sure that whether I'm here or not, I have a message for Ghanaians at the beginning of every new year. Thank you very much. Unemployment is an issue that governments across the world are grappling with. Let me say, it's not a developing nation phenomenon. In the US, in France, if you ask any leader what is the most difficult challenge you face, they'll say jobs. And so we face our own situation with jobs. And the way we've tried to tackle it is, one, through direct interventions, creating opportunities for jobs to happen. And so all these skills training programs and all that were geared towards offering Ghanaian skills, because the first step you have to take in getting a job is to have a skill. You are unemployable if you don't have any skill or any certification. And so you have to provide Ghanaians with skills in order that they are able to be absorbed by the marketplace. And so that's what we were doing with all the job creation and skills training interventions. And these are ongoing. Last year, for example, in 2013, 70,000 young people were reached by CODVET, the CODVET program. Almost 22 million Ghana cedis were spent in skills training and setting them up in small and medium enterprises. And so those direct interventions are things that we'll continue to do. We have the rural enterprise centers that are offering, different facilities to small and medium enterprises in order to create jobs in that sector. We have jobs coming up in the agricultural sector, in the youth in agriculture program, and so on and so forth. And so in many of these sectors, we are putting in direct interventions that help young people to find jobs. In the next few weeks, I'm going to commission the Youth and Enterprises Center project, which we promised. All the groundwork has been done and it's ready to go. We have committed 10 million Ghana cedis to kickstart it. And when that is launched, young entrepreneurs who believe they can go into business and have a business idea will be helped to draw up a feasibility study. That feasibility study will be financed under the program, and then they'll be given the startup capital and equipment to start their businesses. Their business will be monitored and mentored until they grow and are able to stand on their own feet, and then they'll be allowed to go ahead and fly into the wilderness with their businesses. So those are all initiatives that we're putting in place. But aside from that, I believe that the public works that we're going to engage in are also going to provide jobs. In the housing sphere, I cut the sort for OAS. If you go there and see the number of masons and carpenters and others working, on those sites, you'll be amazed. If SNIT starts the work with the affordable housing project, we're going to have many more people working there. I recently cut the sort for the expansion of the Tema Harbour. In constructing the expanded harbour, they are recruiting many artisans. And when the harbour has been extended, because of the volumes of ships that are going to come into the port, they're going to require more hands to be able to handle those volumes. And so by the public works that we're engaged in, if we start building the 100 schools, imagine the number of masons and carpenters and other artisans, steel benders and others who will be employed in building these 100 schools this year. So many other public works that we're going to engage in, the regional airports, the district hospitals and all are going to provide avenues for employment. In the natural growth of the economy, jobs are thrown up. If an economy is growing at 7.4%, naturally jobs will be created as a result of that growth. But often when we talk about unemployment, we focus only on graduate unemployment. We're not talking about employment in the informal sector. We almost always focus on graduate unemployment. With graduate unemployment, we have a problem. We have a problem. If you take graduates, the job market is looking for technicians, mechanical engineering, and those kinds of skills. Now we're training a lot of marketing graduates. We're training a lot of business administration graduates. We're training a lot of graduates who are not, by the structure of our economy, are not immediately absorbable. And so it takes some time for them to find jobs. So if we concentrate only on graduates, say graduates are coming out of university, they can't find jobs, then it's to minimize the whole unemployment issue. What we should do is to see how we can align our university programs to suit what the job market is looking for. And so I want us to initiate a discussion on this kind of issue. We must have a job market survey to see what jobs are out there, so that when young people are going into university, they are guided about what course to go and do in the university. If you decide that you want to go and do Roman civilization, you understand, then your job options are limited because you can only teach. I mean, Unilever won't employ a Roman civilization expert, And so, and it's not to demean the study of Roman civilization, absolutely not. I'm just giving an example about how we should structure our tertiary education to fit the job market. If the universities can come together and do a research, sit with industry and business, and say, what are the skills you are looking for? And they'll say, we're looking for accountants, we're looking for engineers, we're looking for technicians, we're looking for this, we're looking for that. Then based on that, we can say, look, in the university, let's create more space in the universities for these kinds of training and reduce this other kind of training. But if we just want to take the money of students and train them anywhere and throw them into the job market and they can't find work, I don't think it's a very useful exercise. And so I think that is something that we need to look at. But I believe that we will get a handle on it. There's no society that has full employment, but as much as possible, you need to ensure that your unemployment levels are as low as possible, and this government is committed to doing that. Anti-Piracy Task Force. We have not suspended, we have not stopped the work of the Anti-Piracy Task Force. We asked for a moratorium on the work of the Anti-Piracy Task Force. This happened because of the operation that was carried out at the end of last year. The timing was wrong. I mean, Christmas, a period of goodwill, you know, everybody was looking to earn a little something to go and feed their families. I don't think that was the time to go seizing women's wares. And I believe that we also must not concentrate only on the markets. We must concentrate on the borders where these things come through. We cannot be lax on the borders, take bribes from the people, let them bring the textiles in, and then when the women have bought it, go and seize the things from the women. And so I think that the concentration on the markets is misplaced. We must concentrate on the entry points and seize those textiles at the entry points. But one of the things I've discussed with the Minister of Finance, because the women complained that they were ignorant about, they couldn't tell the difference. And so I said, okay, let's place a moratorium. Let's carry out an educational campaign over the first quarter of the year and let the women be educated on the harm that pirated textiles do to us. Textile mills have designers who come out with the patterns for the cloth. As soon as they produce the cloth, unpatriotic citizens take a sample of the cloth off to China, give it to their printers, look at this pattern, and the Chinese will copy it nicely and produce the same fake textile, and then they ship it to Ghana. Often they'll bring it to our neighboring countries and then bring them in small quantities on motorbikes until they brought a whole container in. Now what it does is it steals our intellectual property of our people, and then two, it puts our sons and daughters out of work. For every fake textile you sell, one Ghanaian textile remains unbought. And so you put a Ghanaian worker out of work. Happily, after the incident, I met the market women, and they said they understand the harm it causes and that they are willing to work together with government to deal with the issue of pirated textiles. So I think that we have a consensus going forward. We should discuss with them, educate them, give them a period to educate the women on the illegal fake textiles, and then after that we can resume the operation. One of the things we want to introduce is to introduce a tax stamp. And so when we introduce the tax stamps, we will apply it to the textile sector. And so each printed textile will have a tax stamp on it. And so if it doesn't have a tax stamp, then it's a pirated textile, and it's easy to identify. And then the woman will be told, if it doesn't have this stamp, we come to the market, we take it, no crying, no ajay mewu, you know. But I think that it's something we need to deal with, and we should do it in a humane manner, not to cause adversity to our market women. A vision for Ghana, yes, I'm enjoined by the Constitution to do so. The Constitution says that the President, in his second year in office, must present to Parliament a medium-term development plan outlining his vision for the country. And so our team is working on it, headed by Uncle P.V. Obing, and certainly sometime this year we shall present the vision to Parliament. You will get a flavor of it in the State of the Nation address when I deliver it next month. And one of the main thrusts is how to restructure our economy, how to diversify our economy. I've said this at the United Nations General Assembly on the platform, and said that in Africa we're tired of being exporters of primary products, and that we need to move the next step into processing our products before we export them. It's necessary to do so in order that we can provide jobs for our people. We must also pursue a local content policy so that Ghanaian business, can have opportunity and create more jobs for Ghanaians locally. And so that will come with the State of the Nation address. Laptops that are given under the Better Ghana laptop program are not to be sold. And so if you see them on the market, report whoever it is to the appropriate authority. They are clearly labeled. They have the Ministry of Education label on them. And so if you see it being sold, it's a crime, it's illegal. If anybody gets the laptop and he doesn't want it, he should bring it back. We'll give it to somebody else. And don't go and sell it on the market. And so if you see that, I mean, it's your patriotic duty to ensure that the person is arrested. The private sector must lead our transition to middle income status. Governments cannot leverage the kind of investment to do that transformation. It is the private sector that can do it. And so we'll continue to create space for the private sector to be able to do it. And to allow the private sector to do it, you must create the right enabling environment in the economy. You must bring interest rates down, you must lower inflation, and you must bring the deficit down, ensure currency stability. These are the kinds of environment you must create in order that the private sector can thrive. And the only way you can do that is to take some of the decisions that we have taken to bring expenditure and income into balance. And so we'll continue to work to create the environment for the private sector, but then we're also going to give incentives for the private sector to continue to thrive. I believe that we must give as good incentives to our Ghanaian private sector as we give to foreign investors who come into this country. And that is why recently in the budget, we said that all textbooks and exercise books meant for Ghanaian children should be printed locally. If we don't have the capacity, let the Ghanaian private sector create the capacity to be able to do it. Every textbook you print in China or in Romania or somewhere, you deprive Ghanaians of work. And so that's why we've taken some of those decisions. We're reviewing the procurement law. We're going to publish a list of made in Ghana products, and it's going to be given to the Public Procurement Authority. If you're procuring goods, the first thing would be to look on the list and see if those goods are not being produced here anyway. If they are being produced, why did you opt to import rather than to buy locally? You must justify that before whatever procurement you are giving is endorsed. And so we think we must, government is the biggest spender in the economy. If we spend in the direction of Ghanaian business will grow. But we have a bureaucracy that prefer to give procurements and supplies to foreigners than to give to Ghanaians. And so unless we put in administrative measures that compel them to buy made in Ghana, we would be off track. We tell the citizens buy made in Ghana goods, but government itself is buying those goods from outside. It doesn't make any sense. And so let's start with government. And when we start with government and the people see that government itself is confident in made in Ghana goods and buy made in Ghana goods, then maybe our people will follow suit and also buy made in Ghana goods. I promised to interact with political leaders. Yes, I did. But unfortunately, I was taken to court, and so I suspended it for the meantime. I don't think my political opponents were in the mood to have breakfast with me at the time the court case was ongoing. So now that it is over with and we have gone through the season of goodwill and good cheer, I think that the time is now to bring that program back on track. And so very soon I would do that kind of meeting. I think that it should be a regular feature. We should be able to interact, at least sit down, if we don't even communicate directly to the public, get to know each other, sit, have breakfast together, chat about everything and anything. And I think that it helps to promote the kind of inter-party unity that Ghanaians so desire. Effect of election petition. I'm sure you all know what the effects are. If you just look at the figures, even the first half of the year, 6.7% growth, and then second half of the year, above 7% growth. There was a lot of wait and see as a result of the election petition, and it was in the form of investment. I mean, there is a businessman who is reported to have been waiting for a payment from South Africa to implement something. And it kept delaying. Immediately the court petition was out of the way, the check arrived. So, I mean, it was obvious to him that, his principals were waiting to see, if there wasn't going to be some chaos or something. I mean, in our pledges with our donors. I mean, in the first part of the year when the election petition was going on, very little delivery on donor pledges, several were delivered after the election petition. And so it did have an effect, but I believe that it made our democracy also stronger in the sense that our institutions set up by the Constitution, were tested, especially the judiciary. And I must commend the justices of the Supreme Court for the courage with which they dealt with this petition. I think it's made our judiciary stronger, and all of us must commend them. Thank you. It says, which is this one, promises. I don't know what else a leader should do. I must outline what we're going to do, and the person shouldn't be in too much of a hurry. I have a 4-year mandate. Take all the promises, and I know all of you, all these questions you're asking me are based on promises that have been made. You just have the check mark, and then in 2016, go around and mark them. And then when we hold this session, ask me about those promises again and see if we've delivered or not delivered. Indeed, we are delivering on many of them. There are a lot of infrastructural projects going on. We've completed Tamale Teaching Hospital Phase 1. I went to Wa Regional Hospital. They said I deceived the people when I came and cut the sword for the regional hospital. It's going on impressively. 7 district hospitals have started. And like I said, we'll cut the sword for the senior secondary school projects to start. The Cape Coast Stadium work is ongoing on the Cape Coast Stadium. Relocation of traders from the Kotokraba market is beginning so that work can start on the Kotokraba market. Road projects that we promised, Fufuso, Sola Fufuso Road is ongoing. Takwa Bogoto, Ariamfuri Road is ongoing. As I go around the country, all those promises we made are becoming a reality. And those that I'm talking about the railways, are going to be a reality. We're going to deliver working railways in this country in my first term in office. And so I'm not just making promises. When a blind man says, you throw a stone at you, apologies to Dr. Dana, he's stepping on a stone. Thank you very much. Corruption, the issue of corruption. Corruption is an issue we cannot talk enough about. Indeed, I would say corruption amounts to mass murder because it deprives government of the resources necessary to provide critical, basic social services to the people. It deprives government of the resources to provide CHIPS compounds that could save a mother's life. It deprives government of resources to ensure that children are vaccinated so that they live beyond 5 years. And so when I say corruption is mass murder, it's because of the resources it deprives the government of to be able to deliver basic social services to the people. But I don't believe in segmenting corruption. It is no use turning corruption into a political baton and beating each other with. As president, for me, it is not important under whose tenure which acts of corruption took place. Government is a continuum, and as president, you inherit the assets and liabilities of your predecessor, and it is your duty to deal with the liabilities that you inherit. And so every case of corruption from any government's period, it's my duty to deal with. And so I'm not going to pick and choose and say this case of corruption happened under this president and this one happened under this president. Unfortunately, that has been the discourse on our media, and it's not helpful. It doesn't solve the problem of corruption. And so let the media do its work. Let it expose allegations of corruption. And I've said I'm committed. If the allegations are made, we'll investigate them. If they are real, we will deal with them. If they are not real, well, they are not real. And so you can continue to make those allegations. We will take those allegations, we investigate them, and if we find evidence of corruption, we'll deal with them. But let me say, a lot of corruption occurs because of systems weaknesses and institutional failures. We should not continue to have weak systems and weak institutions so that people take advantage of them, indulge in corruption, and then now we spend taxpayers' money to chase them and investigate them and spend taxpayers' money prosecuting them. And so for me, my focus has been on tightening the administrative lapses that make it possible for people to indulge in corruption. And so if you look at most of the measures that are announced, it is to help tighten those administrative lapses and make corruption more difficult for people to engage in. I've said that part of ministers' performance reviews will be how they deal with the ARICs. The ARICs are the Auditor General's Report Implementation Committees in the MDAs. And the ARICs are supposed to take the Auditor General's report and take action on the recommendations of the report. And then a report must be generated on what the ARICs have done about the Auditor General's report. Those reports must come to my table. And the ministers must make sure that those reports come to my table to see how they've dealt with the Auditor General's report. At the same time, the Attorney General's Department has been mandated to take any Auditor General's report that comes out, take the most serious criminal cases of corruption in those reports. A lot, what we call corruption, a lot of those things might not be, they might be administrative lapses that led to loss to government, but it would not ideally be said to be corruption. But there are some that are corruption, criminal, people just, brazenly misappropriate government funds. And so they should identify those and seek a refund of the money and possible prosecution of people who indulge in those actions. And so, yes, we're committed to the fight against corruption, and we will engage in the fight against corruption no matter whose ox is God, no matter what political color you ascribe to the corruption. Corruption is corruption, whether it occurred under Rawlings or Kufuor or Mills or Mahama. And so we're committed to it, and we will engage in that fight. But I also urge you to have tolerance for the system to work. We exist under a constitution now. Ghana has gone through the period of revolutionary justice. And so if an allegation is made, we just go and pick up people and lock them. And then we spend time investigating. It's only after the investigation. So you are deemed guilty. So you stay in prison while the investigation goes on. If the investigation exonerates you, then they say, oh, sorry, you were not guilty, you can go. But if you were guilty, then you start the court process. And then you are convicted and you stay inside. As president, I can't do that now. All the allegations in JIDA, I cannot go and catch the people and go and lock them in Sawam while the investigation and prosecution goes on. But you notice that when Ghanaians see the people against whom those allegations have been made walking the streets, they say, look, the man is walking the street. Nothing has been done. The president is not doing anything. The president is not doing anything. I mean, we can't eat our cake and have it. We live in a democracy or we live in an unconstitutional government. Unconstitutional government, I would have arrested them and kept them safely and investigated them. But for now, I have to go through the processes, and the Attorney General and EOCO are working on the cases that we have. And even while the trial is going on, if you see them walking the streets, it's because they must have their day in court. And we'll see how things happen. But we're pursuing a retrieve of monies that have been lost. And as the Attorney General retrieves the monies, she'll keep updating the media how much money has been taken back, from these people. So that is that. We're also working to reform the Attorney General's department. When we started the computerization of the courts and the reform of the justice system, we forgot that the Attorney General's department is also an important part of the justice system. And so a lot of money was pumped into automating the courts, building new courtrooms and all that. But if you go to the Attorney General's department, it's still that old moribund, place that we have known it. Poor filing, poor archival, systems, and so on and so forth. And so my hardworking Attorney General has brought a reform for the Attorney General's department. She did a fantastic presentation. We endorsed it and passed it in cabinet, and we have started to roll out the reform of the Attorney General's department to modernize it, to make it more efficient, to be able to conduct prosecutions more speedily than they have done in the past. And so that is also one of the systems we're putting in place to fight corruption. Which other? Am I still a social democrat? Of course. I didn't think you doubted my credentials as a social democrat, and I'm so committed to the Better Ghana agenda. Indeed, everybody is committed to a better Ghana. I don't see anybody who says he doesn't want Ghana to get better. And so not only me, but I guess all Ghanaians are committed to creating a better Ghana. I think that was the last one. Thank you.
Much, Your Excellency.
Gina Blay, Daily Guide. Happy New Year, Mr. President.
Happy New Year, Auntie Gina.
Yes. In the opinion of the former president, President Rawlings, he thinks some of your ministers must be weeded out. They must be shown through that door and not come back. And then your office itself asserted that opinion by announcing before the Christmas holidays that you were having an assessment of the various ministers and so on. We want to know if there will be a cabinet reshuffle soon. I know you may not give us a date, but what is the result of that ministerial assessment that you had? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Albert Salia from the Daily Graphic. Talking about transparency and accountability, Your Excellency, I have just one question. What is the status of the Media Development Fund? Is there an Administrator General? How much has been disbursed and who have been the beneficiaries? Thank you.
Mr. President, my name is Kaba, Asempa FM. This is just a follow-up on the merchant bank question that was asked earlier. The Christian Council of Ghana recently, I think last weekend, I think this weekend, issued a communique among which stated that they wanted a direct intervention of you, Mr. President, in the sale of merchant bank to Fortis. I'm sure that this has come to Mr. President's attention, and we want to hear from you if there will be a direct intervention, as you did sometime earlier. And then just a follow-up, a caller from Adenta consistently called my station, complaining about the road that has been constructed. The road is done, but there are no road markings, there are no temporary traffic lights. There are a lot of accidents that are occurring around the Rees Junction area, and Ghanaians are losing lives. This just to bring to your attention, Mr. President. So something will be done about it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. President. My name is Gifty Andoapia. I work with Joy News TV, and I'm part of the press corps. This would be more like a follow-up to the question on election petition. Now, your officials have told the people of Ghana over and over again, and over here, we've talked extensively about the effects of the election petition, but I'd like to know, sir, what was our expectation as a nation, figure-wise, in terms of foreign direct investment and donations, and the extent to which this expectation was not met since it has affected our economy so much? I would also like to know what you are doing about our dependence on foreign investment and donations to boost our economy. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency. My name is Edward Kwabi. I work with TV3. Last year, you gave a directive to Public Service Commission to furnish your office with a revised framework for performance assessment in all public service institutions. I just want to find out what is the status of this request and what are the key performance indicators. Finally, I want to find out what has been the most important thing you've done in your 1 year, if you can say, and what has been the most important thing you wanted to achieve that you were not able to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Happy New Year. My name is Akol Moses. I report for Bloomberg News. Your Excellency, your economic team gave us a budget deficit target of 9% for 2013. This was missed thanks to the energy crisis situation we had, and also the challenge to your legitimacy. And it led to taking hard decisions, and then today we have increased taxes and what have you, the cut of subsidies and what have you. Into 2014, these things do not exist anymore, but then we still have a deficit target of just 8.5%. Is that not too conservative? Especially as that has ramifications for borrowing, interest rates are rising. And this year we are looking at our third Eurobond.
is the deficit target not too conservative? I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. My name is Molanyo Frank Yonato. I'm a member of the press corps here at the Presidency. I work with Metro TV. My first question has to do with the fact that, is it not the question of how we fight corruption that is the problem? I mean, the mood we use. For instance, if you take the JIDA issue, for instance, we had a draft report where specific persons were named. Then we had the main report, and then it seemed to have watered down the draft report. It's not a problem that, fine, the issue is there, but the mode in which we use is becoming probably the challenge, for government. My second question has to do with the fact that you just spoke about housing, and you are targeting 15,000 housing units. You, in the past, you've led the STS project, and people had raised questions about how it came and then how it failed and all those things. How different is this going to be compared to the previous one that we had? My last question has to do with the CDB loan. What has become of it? And then maybe just for sports, what is government doing? And then just for sports, what is government doing for sports, particularly? I'm more interested in that, since we are preparing towards the World Cup. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Musa Jafari is my name from the Daily Graphic. I'm going back to energy, considering what we went through last year.
Yeah, going back to?
Energy.
Energy, okay.
Yes. Your Excellency, our current installed capacity is about 2,800 megawatts. And you have a target to generate 5,000 megawatts by 2016. And Your Excellency, considering the fact that it took successive governments decades to achieve the current 2,800 megawatts, my question is, how feasible is it for your government to be able to get the needed partnership to put in place the needed infrastructure to generate more than 2,000 megawatts within 3 years to achieve the targeted 5,000 megawatts by 2016? And my second question has to do with the house numbering and street naming. Last year, you gave a directive to the various district executives to start the process and complete it within 18 months. I want to know how far that exercise has gone to and whether they will be able to achieve it within the period. Thank you.
Mr. President, my name is Kwame Dansue Champon. I work with Radio XYZ. My question was actually with the street naming exercise, because I remember that when you assumed office, one of the first directives you gave, I was with you at somewhere around Manchagona, when you said that you were giving them 12 months, and in fact, you were ready to...
18 months.
18 months, and you were ready to dismiss DCs if they did not, comply with the directive. And so I first want to know what has become of it. And then secondly, there are, speculations and, discussions that government is considering taking public universities off subvention. I want to know what exactly is the state of that discussion and if indeed that's a possibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My name is Thomas Tete. I work with Trinity FM, Bogoso, in the Presidency Valley District of the Western Region. Cocoa farmers, for some time now, have not been receiving their bonuses. Now, in the beginning of the main crop, they were looking out for some kind of price increment, but nothing of that sort came. What assurance do you have for them? Thank you.
Different people have different opinions about political appointees who has performed. I'm sure if you ask this room to grade ministers in terms of their performance, you will get a varied response. While somebody thinks one minister has been the best, another will think another one was the best, or another was the worst, or some other was the worst. So every Ghanaian has his opinion about it. And President Rawlings expressed his. Some of you in the media have expressed your opinions in the media quite openly. But I am the coach. So you can express your opinions. I am the coach. I take the decisions. And you don't have to wait to a certain point to reshuffle. I can change any player at any time in the 5th minute, in the 10th minute, in the 45th minute, in the 60th minute, even in the 89th minute. So leave the coach to do his work. Thank you. Status of Media Development Fund. I am not apprised with the details, but I've heard some argumentation about it. My intention is to meet with the Minister of Information and the National Media Commission and the groups involved to see, exactly what transpired, and then to also make arrangements for the future. We're making a provision for it again, and so let's see what was weak in the implementation of the current system, and then let's correct it going forward. And so I'll do something about it. Merchant Bank, indeed, I received a petition from the Center for Accuracy and something, and then just when I received the petition, they went to court. And so the matter is before the courts. I don't understand what I'm expected to do when the matter is pending before the courts. Can a president intervene in a matter that is pending before the courts? I mean, my constitutional law, the little constitutional law I know, stops me, from any direct intervention in a matter that the court is dealing with. And so I would refrain from touching a matter that is, I don't know how the law is, sub judice, yeah? Is it? Whether sub judice or sub judice, I don't know. Yeah, so I think the less said about it, the better. No road markings and traffic lights. Let me advise that road is still ongoing. It's not been handed over to government yet. And so it's still a construction zone. And so drivers must drive with caution. They shouldn't assume that the road is finished because the tarmac has been put on it and drive at all kinds of speed. It's still a construction zone, and so they must drive with caution. The road markings are going to be done. The traffic lights are going to be put in place. They are even still putting the footbridges over the road. And so until it's finished and handed over to government, then it will be a finished road. You have the road signs showing the speed limits and all that kind of thing. And so I'll urge caution while using the road from Tetekwashi to Adenta, because construction is still ongoing on those roads. Even though they are in an advanced stage of completion, we shouldn't assume that because the road is now smooth, you just drive anyhow on the road. People should drive with caution. Foreign direct investments, when Mawena gives us her final figures for 2013, I'll be able to tell. I don't have the figures here. I'm sure GIPC will be compiling, how much foreign direct investment came into Ghana. And when they give the figures, then you can make a comparison and see what the figures were from January to August, and then compare it with post-August and see whether it had an effect on foreign direct investment. But for now, I don't have the figures for foreign direct investment. Every developed nation has benefited from foreign direct investments. Even all the Asian tigers you talk about, all of them were invested in heavily by Japan. And so foreign direct investment is important as well as domestic investment. And so while encouraging private domestic investment, we must also work to attract foreign direct investment. And so it's a combination of the two. With time, as you grow, you'll find that your domestic investment continues to increase, but you never wean yourself off completely foreign direct investment. Even in the most advanced countries, they are looking to have investment. You go to Britain, they're trying to attract the Middle East to come and invest in their economies. And so it's something that is desirable and will continue to pursue. But I don't think that we should focus on it at the expense of our indigenous private sector. We must also assist our indigenous private sector to invest. Public Services Commission revised framework for performance. The Minister of Finance is working on this. Indeed, we're tying it in with revamping the State Enterprises Commission, because the State Enterprises Commission is the monitoring mechanism for the various departments and agencies to monitor performance. And so you can put the performance assessment in place. If you don't have a functioning State Enterprises Commission to sign the performance agreements and monitor the performance agreements, it's useless. And so we are working on it together with the reform of the State Enterprises Commission. The most important thing achieved, I think that I cannot point to one thing. I mean, Ghana is plagued with so many challenges. I had to deal with energy crisis and so many things. I cannot point to one thing and say this was the most important thing achieved. The fact that we survived 1 year, one very difficult year, I think that is thanks to the grace of God, and it's an important thing that we can celebrate. We targeted 9% deficit reduction, but the provisional outturn is 10.2. It shows you how difficult governance is. What happened was we put in place some measures, and then we said that we're going to watch it for the half year and see how things went. In the half year, we realized that we're not going to be on target. So if you notice, after June, the Minister of Finance went back to Parliament and put in the stabilization levy and the 1% import duty and other measures. Now, those measures were to run beyond the end of this year. And so we'll see the full impact of them by the middle of this year, because they started in the middle of the year, so by the end of December, they couldn't have had the full effect on the economy. And that will probably be why, part of the reason why we missed the 10.2 target. But then, aside from the measures we took in the middle of the year, at the end of the year, with the new budget that we introduced, we took additional measures. And so I'm sure that a combination of the two measures is going to ensure that the deficit comes down remarkably. And 8.5% from 10.2, I wouldn't say is not steep. If you calculate GDP and you calculate 10.2 to 8.5% and you convert it in monetary terms, you see what the implication of that is. And so I think it's a fair target, it's achievable. If we more than achieve it, thanks be to Allah, and we'll keep focused and make sure that we're able to reduce the deficit, because it's only when you reduce the deficit that you can bring inflation back under control, and then you can ensure that the currency is more stable, and then also ensure that interest rates come down so that you create the kind of environment that private sector can thrive. And so we're committed to bringing the macroeconomic environment back on track. You'll be a bit unfair if you compare a draft report and a final report. By virtue of the fact that we don't have security of documents in this country, as soon as some reports comes out, some media house has it. And then when another report comes out, another has it. It's possible in the draft report, you might have made wrong conclusions because the investigation was ongoing. And so as the investigation was ongoing and the interrogations were ongoing, you find that some of the conclusions in the draft report were not correct. And so it's always likely that a final report and a draft report will not be the same. And so I wouldn't see the legitimacy for saying why did the draft report have this accusation and in the final report it wasn't there or it was watered down. The investigators must have noticed that probably it was not what they thought. And so the final report and the draft report might have differed. But I mean, I think that the most important thing is that people should work with the authentic report that is given. Often we're in a hurry to have a scoop, and so we go and check the litter bins of the committee and see if they've left some paper there. Or we find some devious, let me not say devious, we find some ingenious ways of getting the information before everybody else. And often it leads to a lot of disinformation, it leads to a lot of unpleasant consequences for a lot of people. And so the final report is a final report. And let us not use any earlier report as a comparison to the final report. In any case, the matters are being investigated not on the basis of the report, but on the basis of fresh investigations that IOCO and the Attorney General are conducting. And so if anything happens there, it is not only based, it's not based on the report, but it's based on the investigations that they have carried out. I didn't say we're targeting 15,000 housing units. I said that we have 4,700 and something that were left us by the previous administration, and Senate was going to finish them. And I cut short for 5,000, and another 5,000 is awaiting signature. It's not the same as saying we are targeting 15,000 houses. I just told you the programs that were on stream. That is not the only housing we're going to do. As and when we get proposals that are useful, we will interrogate them, we'll send them to Parliament. If Parliament approves them, we'll bring them on. And so housing is an area we're going to continue to engage so that we reduce the housing deficit in this country. The STX was a project that was taken on in good faith, and we pursued it diligently. It was approved by Parliament. Unfortunately, after the project was approved, the partners, the Ghanaian partner and the Korean partners, started to quarrel, and they ended up in court and made it impossible for the project to continue. And so government has since, discarded the STX project and is looking at other ways of providing housing for the populace. And that's why I'm talking about other housing initiatives. The CDB loan project, the Ghana gas component is on schedule, is being disbursed. We have 4 more subsidiary agreements that are awaiting signature. They were supposed to be signed before the end of November, but they haven't yet been signed. But we're still in contact with the CDB to expedite action on the remaining subsidiary agreements. These next 4 include the landing sites, and some other significant projects, if implemented, will make a lot of difference in the lives of our people. Sports, we're preparing for the World Cup. The Ministry of Youth and Sports is coming out with its strategy, and when they have done that, they will present it to government, and government together with the ministry will see how we can sufficiently resource them to be able to give the Black Stars the proper frame of mind to be able to go to Brazil and do justice and make us proud. 2,800 megawatts to 5,000 megawatts. How can I guarantee that we will hit 5,000 megawatts? Government alone cannot raise all the investments necessary to attain 5,000 megawatts power generation. And so you need to create an environment that makes it conducive for the private sector to come in, and that's what we've been doing. And so currently we have MOUs signed with several companies that are coming in to set up independent power production facilities. And they believe that the current situation is ripe because we are seeing the gas delivery coming on track by the middle of the year. We've started the development of the 10 field, which is the second oil production field. And when that production comes on stream, late 2015, early 2016, additional gas will be added to the 120 million standard cubic feet from the Jubilee field. And that will increase the amount of gas that is available. Then we have the ENI Sankofa field, which has far more gas than Jubilee and 10 combined. And they're currently working on the plan of development. Once that is approved, they will start going to operation phase. And by 2017, we hope that Sankofa gas, should also be available. And so the prospects in terms of the fuel to run these thermal plants look much better than they were in the past. And so you cannot compare me to my predecessors because in the past we didn't have gas. The only supplier of gas was the West African gas pipeline. And so if they were putting in any additional thermal generation, it was going to use expensive light crude oil. And so the prospects now for getting independent power producers in is much better than at any time. And that's why I'm optimistic that we can achieve the 5,000 megawatts target. And I'm going to work to make sure that we are able to achieve it. Street naming, I still stand by my directive. Unfortunately, some of the DCs have changed. And so I don't know, I'll have to identify which ones were in office when I gave that ultimatum, because it will be unfair. Some of them have just taken office to be held for the sins of their predecessors. And so for those who were in office when I gave the 18 months and are continuing in office, I'm holding you to the 18 months. I think the deadline was given sometime in April last year. And so calculate 18 months from now. I want to see those street signs. At least Oko Vanderpoy was there. And so I'm reminding him that I want to see those street signs before the deadline that I gave. But I know he's working on it. He's been briefing me on the work he's done so far, so I'm convinced that they will achieve it. Public universities to be weaned. We are undertaking a program to wean some subvented agencies off government budget. We're looking at those who have the capacity to stand on their own feet and to wean them off government budget so that they can be more autonomous, they can, set their conditions of service and not depend on the consolidated fund. I don't know which public universities are on, but I think that there are one or two of them that are parts of the pilot, weaning. The Minister of Finance announced this policy in the budget, and I'm sure that when he comes back, he'll be able to identify exactly which organizations have been chosen. A study was done to see some of those that could stand on their own feet. I know Kolebu Hospital is one of them, that I am sure I saw. But the public universities, I'm not sure exactly which one. But it's not only, there are other organizations, government organizations, that have the ability to stand on their own feet. The Food and Drugs Board charges levies and fees, and yet we are paying the salaries of staff of the Food and Drugs Board when they can pay their own salaries from the levies and fees that they collect. And so it doesn't help to continue to encumber the consolidated fund when you need those revenues for social interventions and then use them to pay organizations that have the capacity to look after themselves. And so we'll give more information on this project as we go forward. The final question, bonuses. I'm not aware about bonuses, but I know that consistently bonuses are paid. You said for some time. I don't know what for some time means. Is it 3 years? Is it 4 years? Or is it this year? Their bonuses have not yet been paid. But I'll find out whatever it is. I mean, cocoa farmers are entitled to their bonuses. We were not able to do an increment in the cocoa price because of the collapse of cocoa prices on the international market. Indeed, when the calculation was done, Cocoa Board was running at a loss in terms of the local producer price they were paying and what they were getting per ton in terms of exported cocoa. And so in that circumstance, it was going to be difficult to give another increment. So we decided to hold the prices where they are and see what the reaction on the international market is. Luckily, the price seems to be regaining and going up. And so we'll study it, and if the trend is consistent and it continues going up, then maybe in the next cocoa season, the Minister of Finance will consider whether to give an increase on the producer price. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for this thorough interrogation, and I must say that you have justified the confidence of Ghanaians in asking, I'm sure, all the burning questions that have been on the minds of Ghanaians, and I wish to assure that in the coming year, I will make myself as available as possible so that from time to time we can interrogate issues of concerns and put out information from, let me call myself the chief executive, so that everybody knows it's on the same wavelength what is going on in the country. I must say I've enjoyed this opportunity very much, and I want to reassure you and pledge to this country that I'll continue to work to create a country that is prosperous and creates equal opportunities for all our citizens. I thank you very much.